All right, this is going to be a spoiler review for the film Scream 7. We're back now. This is the 7th film, and they kind of feel like Spyglass or Paramount. They really overcompensated with this film because, like I said in my review, they fired Melissa Barrera for talking about Gaza, and then Jenna Ortega left because she's doing the Wednesday show, and she probably did it out of solidarity, and so they had to spend $500,000 to rewrite this movie, apparently, and everyone thought that they were going to reboot the entire series from 4 at least, or just from the first one, because they had a lot of cast members from the previous films in this film. But that's not the case. This is an actual sequel still, and it's basically just writing out the two sisters from 5 and 6 and replacing it with Sidney and her new family. So Sidney's back. She's Sidney Evans now. She runs a coffee shop. Her husband Mark is a police officer, and she's got a 17-year-old daughter named Tatum, whom she doesn't like to connect with because her daughter always asks questions about the previous attacks and stuff like that, and Sidney did write a book and everything, and so did Gale, and there's like 8 stab movies that are based off of all of the different attacks, or just the first one. And basically Sidney doesn't want to, you know, train her daughter or build her up or make sure she's a badass or anything. She wants her just to be a normal teenage girl, so she always avoids talking about her previous attacks and her experiences. Sidney doesn't seem to have a lot. She's kind of resigned out of it. They have to keep in continuity with the 6th film where she didn't show up, so she's just like not going to travel to New York whenever there's a Ghostface attack. So she's like sat that adventure out and just trying to live a normal life in Pine Grove, which I think is in Texas because all of the street details of the theater say Texas or Dallas on it. So she's probably in a small town in Texas. But it's a little bit weird that she never trained her daughter with guns, at least, because they live in Texas and her, you know, her husband's a cop or whatever. But I do like the aspect of her marrying a police officer. That makes sense. But I think the biggest problem with this movie is the plot armor. You know, they had to pay $7 million to bring back Neve Campbell in order to be the flagship character of the franchise. They weren't confident in the movie just you know, writing in new characters or moving on to a different protagonist and having, you know, they could have done something, honestly, because Tatum's 17, so you could just make her 18 and say she's graduating. She's going to the same school that the Meeks nephew and niece are at, and then Ghostface comes after her because he wants to, you know, bring back Sidney into the fold, and then you can bring in Gale if you need to. But overall, this movie has too many characters of the original movies coming in and not having anything to do. Gale shows up with the two half of the core 4, and they really don't have anything to do in this movie. They just get attacked and they survive. Gale literally just gets left on the street, and she's not there for the finale. So, and then Sidney, you know, Neve Campbell probably wouldn't return unless they would not kill her off. Same for Courtney Cox. So if the two of them aren't willing to be killed off, then they have too much plot armor. And it's great that they're the sort of core tenets of the original franchise, but if you know, it really ruins the tension if characters can't be killed. And especially one character in this movie, his name's Mark, he's the husband. He gets like super stabbed like 4 or 5 times in the garage, and then he just survives, and it really takes the tension out of the movie. It's the same with Chad and Mindy. I mean, Chad has been super stabbed twice now in 2 movies, and he's fine. Same thing happens in this movie. Same with Mindy. So the two of them are just hanging around and not really doing much. And I really like Tatum as a character. She'd probably go to university in the next movie, so they could find a way to have her go to a different school, maybe change her name or something, and then maybe the Chad and Mindy, I don't even know if they're in school anymore, but you'd have to, it's hard to keep it organic because you have so many sets of characters. You got the original characters from the first film, and you've got characters from the reboot sort of sequel series from 5 and 6, and then you got new ones on top of that in this new one. They're going to have to shore up some of the protagonists for future installments, because you can't just keep having Sidney and Gale there every movie and they never die. It's just sort of ruins the tension, I feel. So speaking of spoilers, the movie teases the return of Stu Macher, because the beginning of the film, Ghostface kills a couple who are staying at a murder house, and it's Stu Macher's home. So Sidney is called by Ghostface while she's working, and Stu Macher video calls her and says he's not dead, he's been waiting, and he wants revenge. So he starts attacking Tatum's friends, and then we find out later in the movie that it's AI, it's not him. And also Sidney does a thing where she goes into her house and the TVs are set up with AI versions of all of the previous Ghostface killers, or the ones from the first trilogy anyway, and they're taunting her and trying to get in her head. That's just like a member-berry scene, to be honest. It's really just nostalgia. It's there for the fans. It felt a little bit over the top, to be honest, and it's always fun to see old faces return, but it just feels like a really cheap ploy. And we find out that the killer is Jessica. It's played by Anna Camp. It's Sidney's neighbor and Lucas's mother. She basically was, she killed her husband and got away with it because she was inspired by Sidney. And then when Sidney didn't go to New York, she, got really upset at that. She's like a super fan. So she went into a mental health facility and met one of the, I guess, the guys there. He's one of the, I don't know, he's a porter or something. He's one of the staff there, basically. They connected. He had a background in AI, so they decided to mess with Sidney and attack her in order to revitalize her, I guess, or something. I don't really know. The Scream Ghostface killers never have the best motivation. So the two of them decide to pretend to be Stu and do some work and mess with her. But, that's just another red herring, I didn't really mind the twist or anything, but I think the highlights of the film are definitely the beer kill and the McKenna Grace dying. Really disemboweled her. Really brutal stuff. But then the movie holds back on killing off Mark. He survives, and then no one else really gets it. There's only 7 kills in the movie, not including the killers. And then I guess the movie does touch on the sort of true crime fandom, because the opening couple goes to a murder house, but they don't really play up the celebrity culture or the people sick fascination with true crime. They don't have like Sidney have PTSD or something, or like someone tries to get her autograph and she's like, angry or whatever. They don't really go for that sort of angle. So the movie's lacking themes of modern day social media and stuff like that too. Everyone seems to know who she is too, because Tatum's drama teacher's like, oh, how come you're not doing a good job acting? I thought you would be great because you're the daughter of Sidney Prescott. So she's kind of like she's a known figure because she's been attacked 5 times in this world, and there's movies based off of her and all this stuff, and she's written books and stuff. So she's not really keeping a low profile either. She runs a coffee shop, and she's not too, she's not walking around strapped all the time, and neither are any of the other characters. So I think, the movie just lacks freshness, because Ghostface will always be cool, but they don't use the voice enough in this movie because they're using Stu Macher's sort of avatar to mess with her, and it's not really that interesting or that a great reveal, to be honest. And overall, the movie does have like the kills, but it's lacking stakes. Is Sidney going to die in this one? Is Gale going to die in this one? Is, the daughter? And not really, because they sort of hold themselves back. They're at the mercy of Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, who, if they don't want to return to be killed off, then they won't. And it's like the Expendables movies, if you don't kill anyone off, then it's hard to have an action movie without tension and suspense if no one can die. So they're going to have to maybe just slowly write them out. And I noticed they didn't also try to keep Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega and have them killed. That would have raised the stakes for the next movie instead of just firing her. But I guess they are opening the option of having her come back. I don't think they would come back, to be honest. So overall, the Scream 7 is a little bit underwhelming in this regard. I do enjoy the franchise. And, this one's going through the motions, but it definitely feels like they're playing it safe. So that's my spoiler review for Scream 7.